The RMS Titanic, often dubbed the Unsinkable Ship, has captured the world's imagination for over a century. Its tragic maiden voyage in April 1912, ending in disaster when it struck an iceberg and sank, is one of the most well-known maritime disasters in history. However, over the years, a plethora of myths, misconceptions, and inaccuracies have surrounded the Titanic, creating a blend of fact and fiction that has fascinated historians, filmmakers, and the general public alike. In this video, we will see the myths and actual facts about the Titanic, shedding light on what really transpired on that fateful night and dispelling some of the most persistent misconceptions. Myth number 1. The Titanic was unsinkable. One of the most pervasive myths surrounding the Titanic is that it was deemed unsinkable by its builders and owners. In reality, while the ship was hailed as technologically advanced and exceptionally safe, the term unsinkable was a misnomer. White Star Line, the company that operated the Titanic, never officially claimed it to be unsinkable. The unsinkable label may have arisen from the ship's watertight compartments, which were intended to make it extremely resilient to flooding. There were 16 of these compartments, and the ship could stay afloat with any 2 of them breached. But the facts: the Titanic was considered state-of-the-art in its time, equipped with advanced safety features, including watertight compartments. The ship was, however, vulnerable to severe damage, as the Iceberg collision tragically demonstrated. Myth number 2. Inferior materials used in construction. Another persistent myth alleges that the Titanic was built using subpar materials, particularly cheap, low-quality steel. This myth suggests that the ship's construction was compromised, making it more susceptible to damage and eventual sinking. But the facts: the Titanic was constructed using standard materials and techniques of the era. The quality of the materials was consistent with industry standards at the time. The ship's steel plates were, in fact, of reasonable quality and thickness for the period. The Iceberg's impact caused a catastrophic breach in the hull, which would have likely resulted in the sinking of any ship of similar construction in that era. Myth number 3. The ship broke in half upon impact. A popular portrayal in films and documentaries is that the Titanic broke in half upon striking the iceberg. This dramatic image has become ingrained in the collective memory of the disaster. But the facts: the Titanic did, in fact, break in 2 before sinking, but this event occurred much later in the disaster timeline. The ship initially sustained a long vertical gash along its starboard side when it collided with the iceberg. The structural failure that caused the ship to split into 2 sections happened as it was sinking beneath the surface of the ocean. The stern section rose high into the air before descending into the depths, while the bow section sank more gradually. Myth number 4. Inaccuracies in the ship's blueprints. A lesser-known myth surrounding the Titanic is that the ship's blueprints contained errors, resulting in a flawed design. Some accounts even suggest that the ship's length or the number of lifeboats was inaccurately specified. But the facts: the Titanic's blueprints were carefully prepared by the ship's builders, Harland and Wolff, under the supervision of experienced naval architects. Any variations in the ship's dimensions were typically within acceptable tolerances for ship construction of that era. The ship's complement of lifeboats did meet the requirements of British Board of Trade regulations at the time of its construction. The disaster prompted significant changes in maritime regulations, leading to the implementation of stricter lifeboat requirements on future ships. Myth number 5. Passengers and crew myths. The band played "Nearer, My God, to Thee" as the ship sank. One of the enduring myths associated with the Titanic's sinking is the belief that the ship's band played the hymn "Nearer, My God, to Thee" as it went down. This image of musicians bravely continuing to play amid chaos has become an iconic symbol of the tragedy. But the facts: survivors' accounts and testimonies from crew members suggest that the band did play music to help calm passengers during the evacuation. The exact song played is a matter of some debate, as there were no survivors from the band itself to confirm the selection. Multiple accounts indicate that "Autumn" and "Songe d'Automne" were among the tunes played. The "Nearer, My God, to Thee" story may have arisen from a misinterpretation or embellishment of events. Myth number 6. Third-class passengers were locked below deck. A persistent myth suggests that third-class passengers, often referred to as steerage, were intentionally locked below deck during the evacuation, preventing them from escaping the sinking ship. But the facts: there is no credible evidence to support the claim that third-class passengers were locked below deck. While there were challenges and difficulties faced by third-class passengers during the evacuation, such as language barriers and unfamiliarity with ship layout, they were not deliberately trapped. Many third-class passengers did manage to reach the upper decks and board lifeboats. Myth number 7. The captain went down with the ship. One of the most enduring myths surrounding maritime disasters is the notion that the ship's captain must always go down with his vessel. In the case of the Titanic, this myth suggests that Captain Edward J. Smith remained on the sinking ship until the end. But the facts: Captain Smith did not go down with the Titanic. He was last seen on the bridge, issuing orders and coordinating the evacuation. Smith ultimately perished in the disaster, but there is evidence to suggest that he was not on the ship when it sank. Some accounts suggest that he may have been swept off the bridge by the final waves as the ship went under. Myth number 8. The night of the sinking myths. The lack of binoculars in the crow's nest. One often cited myth is that the lookout in the Titanic's crow's nest did not have access to binoculars, which could have potentially helped spot the iceberg sooner. But the facts: there is some evidence to suggest that binoculars were indeed available on board, but they were not in the crow's nest when the iceberg was spotted. The binoculars were supposedly lost when Second Officer Charles Lightoller transferred to another ship before the Titanic's voyage. Whether the presence of binoculars would have made a significant difference in detecting the iceberg remains a matter of speculation. Myth number 9. The ship sank in one piece. Another commonly held belief is that the Titanic sank in one piece, as depicted in various films and documentaries. But the facts: the Titanic did not sink in one piece. It broke apart into two sections. The structural failure occurred due to the immense stress placed on the ship's hull as it filled with water and began to sink. The stern section, which was the larger of the two, remained afloat for a brief period before plunging into the ocean. Myth number 10. The sinking took hours. Many depictions of the Titanic sinking, particularly in films, portray the disaster as unfolding over several hours, with passengers and crew enduring a prolonged ordeal. But the facts: the Titanic struck the iceberg at approximately 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912. And it sank beneath the waves at around 2:20 a.m. on April 15, 1912. The entire sinking process took just over 2 hours. The speed of the Titanic's descent into the frigid waters of the North Atlantic was influenced by various factors, including the extent of the damage and the ship's gradual submersion. Myth number 11. The rescue ship arrived too late. One of the persistent myths is that the rescue ship, the RMS Carpathia, arrived too late to save more passengers from the Titanic. But the facts: the Carpathia received the Titanic's distress signal and steamed at full speed to the scene. Despite its best efforts, the Carpathia arrived after the Titanic had already sunk. The Carpathia's crew rescued 705 survivors from lifeboats and delivered them to New York City. Myth number 12. The Titanic was cursed. Some myths and legends suggest that the Titanic was cursed from the outset, with bad omens and superstitions surrounding its construction and maiden voyage. But the facts: there were no credible curses associated with the Titanic. Superstitions and rumors of bad luck have arisen in the wake of many significant historical events, including the sinking of the Titanic. Such beliefs are often attempts to make sense of tragic events and should be viewed as folklore rather than factual accounts. Myth number 13. The ghost ship myth. The ghost ship myth posits that the Titanic has been seen or heard after its sinking, haunting the waters of the North Atlantic. But the facts: there is no concrete evidence to support the existence of a ghost ship version of the Titanic. Ghost ship stories often emerge after maritime disasters, with individuals claiming to have seen or heard eerie apparitions related to the ill-fated vessel. These tales are generally considered to be products of folklore and superstition rather than factual accounts. Please hit the like button if you know something new today, and share this video to your friends and family in case you think that this video has some interesting information. And support us by subscribe to this channel and hit bell icon to get more videos. Thank you and see you in the next video. Have a great day.